This is at the end of the movie, and Bo, you'll correct me where I'm wrong, but I'll never forget it. We were all there, and by this time we are all really family. That's what happens to good film crews anyway, but a Cassavetes film crew starts out as a family, and you weed out the bad ones, the ones who don't really want to be there. So when at the end of it, when you are there, you're family. Well, if any of you have ever been part of a family, families don't always get along. So Jenna asks him, right in the middle of the scene where Catherine goes like this, she goes like that to Catherine, and the final scene where Peter slaps her on the couch and all this, it's building up, and it took days to shoot this. She dares to ask John what he thought Mabel would do. And John, you know, if you notice in his movies, especially the ones he did himself, he always played the bad guy. He loved to play the bad guy. I always thought it's really ironic because here's one of the nicest human beings in the world. I mean, if you knew him, you'd know I'm not even making this up. He would play the most dastardly character. In Minnie, which is really a comedy, he's the one rotten person in the whole movie, and he is really rotten.
Rosemary's Baby.
Well, but that's not his film. That's,
no,
but he was great. Dirty Dozen, you know, he was very good at that. Well, he looks at Jenna with the steeliest look. I remember I was this far away from him. And he says, Jenna, you know more about Mabel Longetti than anybody in the world. If you don't know how to play her, let's wrap and go home. And they got into a fight right there in front of all of us. It was a mannerly fight, but at the end, Jenna said, if I had a knife, I'd cut your heart out right here. And, you know, but that's the passion that they had for their art and what they were doing. So it took that kind of energy. She went off, she came back to another room, and finally, just like Steve said, she found whatever it took to continue that amazing character. But John would no more tell her what to do than he would put on a blonde wig and play the part himself. This is a union town, but there was a very strong, vibrant, non-union world. And John had union guys working because of something happened. The first 3 weeks, the first cameraman that he had in mind didn't work out. For a week, while he changed things, he brought in some union guys. It took about 3 to 5 days for the union to catch on, and they had to go. So John, you know, is just stop it. So what he's grinning about it is John came to me and said, you and I are going to shoot the movie. So I took over as the nominal DP. I was as green as grass. I didn't know anything, but I sure knew a lot after we shot 1 million feet of film. And I did it with his permission. He did this to you. He didn't care that you didn't know. He knew what he didn't know. You know, John once said that he was only interested in love. Okay? And when you think about that, as an artist, that's all he explored. That's what he was after. So he found ways to give it. He got it. He was the embodiment of it. When I sat down this afternoon in my home office and I said, you know, I should prepare something for tonight, because we've done this so much. Poor David was worried about, gee, what question should we ask? Is this going to, David, it will flow. Don't worry, you won't be able to stop us once you get us started. So I wrote down the following adjectives about John, okay? Original, unruly, comical, competitive, loyal, rambunctious, sentimental, resourceful, courageous, daring, contentious, unpredictable, unique, forgetful, focused, unfocused, passionate, outrageous, loving, and alive. I wanted to find a way to give you a sense, which is the hardest thing for us to do, about a man there was nobody like. That if you take a consensus among everyone who knew him, you could say this: did you ever meet anybody like him? Absolutely not. It wouldn't be no. No, absolutely not.
This is Love Streams, okay? John Boyd is in a scene with two other guys, and they're at his apartment, and supposedly there's like 40 or 50 dead chickens on the floor, okay? So the two actors walk in to do the scene, and they do the lines, and da-da-da. He says, do it again. They walk in again, they do the lines, do it again. Walk in, do it again. He says, guys, you're walking in, there's 40 dead chickens on the floor. Don't you see him? So he takes himself and he just throws himself on the table, okay, with his back on the table, puts his feet and hands up in the air. He says, do the fucking scene. The entire scene, he just stayed there on the table with his hands and feet in the air, and he was a dead chicken. It was monumentally
Got
incredible.
everybody out of their head, I'll tell you.
Right. They never did the same thing again. It was, and actually one of these guys, Robert, was an accountant. He made him an actor. I mean, he was literally did the books and was an associate producer, and he became an actor in this play. Really phenomenal experience.
When we first started shooting, we were given space at the American Film Institute, which is the old Doheny estate, and we were all broke. I was riding an old Ariel Square motorcycle, and everybody else. We pulled up there and just kind of took joy in listening to coffee cups drop around as we all arrived in this beautiful 19-acre estate and mansion. And we had a run of the place. John had gone to AFI and asked for space, and they were more than willing to give him space. He was going to be their first resident kind of live-in director. And so he got this beautiful production office, use of the screen room, 3 editing rooms, music room, and he really, we were supposed to be out of there in 6 months, and we were still cutting, and we left about a year and a half later after that, you know. But John was absolutely amazing. I ended up moving my music room down on as we expanded, we all kind of spread out a little bit on the estate. These guys were AFI. They were the talk of the town at AFI. I mean, and then Mike kind of came in under John's wing, so nobody was going to say anything from that department.
John had the offices, John and Paul and Al Rubin, they had offices in one room in the upstairs. All the rest of the house was a set. And Cliff looks at me and says, you know, John wants to see you upstairs. Really? Okay. And I go upstairs. I walk in, there's Al, there's John, there's Paul, the producer. And John looks at me and says, Mike, could you close the door behind you? And then he says, Caleb's gone, you and I are going to shoot the rest of the movie.
Great.
And there's a book on the National Registry, the films that are put in every year, 25 films that Congress picks. In that book, it says he got rid of Caleb Deschanel and he picked a complete neophyte like Bo Harwood, Michael Ferris. So you can read about it in books.
Really, we didn't have any money, that's for sure, on Woman Under the Influence, and but we did have Peter Falk, and they made a deal. This was like after we got the house that we were going to shoot Woman in, and you know, we were fixing it up and all that. he made a deal with Peter Falk that Peter would match any money that John raised. So I gave John an incentive, to do all that. It's a lot of heat on us because, like Mike was saying, the unions were really watching us, And not only that, it spread out even more than that. According to John, a couple places where he could usually go for money were closed off to him. Certain labs that extended him credit weren't doing that anymore during Women Under the Influence. And so it was hard. The most money I ever made in the 2 years that I worked on Woman was $75 a week. And
Jesus.
Before that, it was, I think, sometimes $40. In the beginning, nothing. But when we finally finished the thing, and we're nominated for, with at the end of everybody's thumb, and we're nominated for 2 Academy Awards. I remember being down in John's office. It was at the end of the day, and I remember the people who bought some of their TV sets, they set up and cut it, and we were so excited about being nominated and all that. I walked into John's office, which was, these offices were like 14 offices on a corner facing Wilshire Boulevard, and there's a big theater there, the Wilshire Theater.
Still there.
Yep, and John's office was on the corner, right before the corner, and right if you stuck your head out the window, John's window, and looked down, the marquee of the theater was right there, and it was Woman Under the Influence. So we could go out on the fire escape, and there was Woman Under the Influence there, and there were some people coming up the sidewalks to get in line to see our movie. It was so great, and then John said, "Bo, go get a couple of furniture pads." And I went and got a couple of furniture pads and came back. He grabbed a bottle of Courvoisier, a couple of glasses. We went out on the fire escape.
The line was around the block.
Yeah, we go out on the fire escape, pours me a brandy, a cognac, pours himself one, looks at me.
Fuck 'em.
I don't know.
I'll keep this quick because I know I've had more than my fair share of time. When it comes to money, on a Woman, we worked, 4 months, and then we came back. We worked regular hours, 12-hour days, not on the weekends. We worked for free for 4 months or more. John, in the last 2 months, he got word that some of the crew was getting hungry. So he found some money, and everyone got $75 a week subsistence money. That was enough money to eat on back then, if you were, And he made sure everyone had that. And then, after a Woman, the only film he ever made that actually made money, it's in a frame over my desk in my office, a thank you letter saying all these nice things about working on the show with a huge check. So he shared all that money that he and Peter had made in profit with the crew. So that's something that's important to remember. Also, a non-union picture getting 2 nominations in this town in 1974 was just the same as getting the award itself.
Yeah.
And they're giving Jenna an
They
honorary
gave it to him.
Academy Award this year, in the next month, when is it, February or whenever, because they still feel guilty about it. Not to mention, she's the best actress in America.